That Tuesday, Lucas dropped the bombshell like that, between bites of leftover chicken pot pie. The words tumbled out of his mouth like they meant nothing. Christina, I've always had my doubts. I think it's time we did a DNA test. At first, I thought he was joking. 15 years of raising Noah together, sleepless nights with colic, school projects, emergency room visits for a broken arm. 15 years of being a team, or so I thought. I laughed. Don't be ridiculous. But Lucas didn't laugh. His jaw was clenched, his fork clinking against his plate, his eyes fixed downward as if he were trying to avoid mine. What do you mean, doubts? I asked carefully. I mean exactly what I said. I've had my reasons for questioning myself, and I think it's time we know for sure. I didn't know what was more upsetting, the implication or the fact that he said it so calmly, as if we were discussing taxes or replacing the dishwasher. Lucas and I met when I was 26 and tired of playing games. He was reliable, if not particularly romantic, the kind of man who remembered to pay the bills on time and mow the lawn every Sunday. Our life was never exciting, but it was stable, or so I thought. Noah came along a year after we got married. There were no complications, no drama. Lucas was in the living room. He even cried when I held him. I remember because I'd never seen him cry before, not even at his mother's funeral. And now this. I lay awake all night, staring at the ceiling fan, counting its rotations. I didn't ask why he doubted me. I didn't yell or demand that he take it back. I just lay there beside him, listening to his steady breathing, as if he hadn't just thrown a grenade into our lives. 2 days later, we were in the hospital. The technician was gentle, maybe too gentle, and I couldn't help but wonder what she saw in us. A nervous teenager, a cheating wife, a controlling husband. When Noah asked why we were all going to a special doctor, Lucas said it was for routine checkups. I stayed silent. I didn't tell anyone, not my sister Susan, who calls me every night like clockwork, not my best friend Mary, who always has something to say about men and their egos, not even Noah's pediatrician, Dr. Michael, who's known him since he was 2 years old. I just waited, and each hour that passed felt like a vice tightening around my chest. The wait lingered for 9 days, not 7 as the coach had estimated. 9, and every hour of those 9 days felt like wet wool draped over my shoulders, itchy, heavy, suffocating. Lucas barely spoke. He left for work early, came back late, ate dinner without comment. No goodbye kisses, no goodnight, sweetie. The air between us was cold and sterile, a polite silence like strangers sharing a hospital room. On the 5th day, I asked him calmly, without accusation, what had made him start to question. He didn't even look up from the sports section. A few things. It doesn't matter now. The results will speak for themselves. That answer didn't feel right to me, not because it was vague. Lucas had always been the type to keep his thoughts to himself, but because there was something sharp behind it, something that seemed premeditated. I started to replay it in my head. Who could have said something to him? Was he talking to someone? A coworker, a friend from church? Maybe someone had seen Noah and made a comment. But even that didn't make sense. Noah looked like Lucas, the same crinkle in his jaw, the same brown curls, though Lucas kept them short, the same stubborn frown when he was told no. Still, something had changed. I finally told Susan, my sister. Her reaction was exactly what I expected. He's always been insecure, Christina. Remember that thing with his ex and the piano teacher, she said. He's never trusted anyone, not even himself. That was a decade ago, and I thought he'd gotten over it, but maybe some wounds don't heal. Maybe they just scab over until someone scratches them too hard. Susan offered to come over, but I said no. I didn't want her in the house right now, not with the energy this place was radiating. I could see it even in Noah. He was quieter, more reserved. At dinner, he would push his peas around his plate as if they might whisper something to him if he waited long enough. "Is Dad mad at you?" he asked one night, barely above a whisper. "No, honey," I lied. "He's just tired." I started watching Lucas more closely, the way he checked his phone in the garage, the way he closed his laptop when I walked into the room. He used to share everything, boring spreadsheets from work, articles about home improvement projects we'd never actually do, but now everything was sealed. I'd opened his laptop once while he was in the shower. It was password protected now, Never had been before. The morning of the results, I didn't drink my coffee, couldn't keep anything down. Noah was at school, thank God. Lucas and I drove to the clinic in silence. His hands were tight on the steering wheel, mine clenched in my lap, nails digging into my palms. The receptionist smiled too brightly. Mr. and Mrs. Alden this way. The doctor looked serious. He had the kind of expression you see on men about to deliver news that changes everything. He didn't start with the results, or even look at the folder at first. Before we begin, he said, looking back and forth between us, I want to ask if you're both emotionally prepared for what you're about to hear. I looked at Lucas. He didn't move, didn't blink, just nodded once. Yes, he said. I didn't speak. My voice had disappeared somewhere between the parking lot and the chair I was sitting in. The doctor opened the folder with deliberate slowness. Each page turn sounded like a clock ticking louder and louder. According to the analysis, he said, placing a finger on the paper, the probability of paternity is 0%. My ears rang, my hands went cold. For a second, I thought I was going to pass out. My heart wasn't racing. It had gone. I felt nothing. Just a hollowness, a strange numbness in my chest that made it hard to breathe. Lucas leaned back, exhaled through his nose, and murmured, I knew it. But the doctor didn't look at him. He was still watching me. There was something odd in his eyes. Not judgment, not pity, but concern. There's one more thing, he said carefully, something that concerns me as a medical professional. Lucas straightened. What are you talking about? The doctor looked from me to Lucas, then back again. I ran the standard genetic matching protocol, not just between father and son, but between mother and son as well. My stomach churned. What? I whispered. He paused, then said the sentence I would never forget. Mrs. Alden, according to this, Noah is not biologically related to either of you. I stared at him. I must have heard wrong. I had to have heard wrong. Lucas's chair scraped the floor. What kind of sick joke? The doctor held up his hand. This is not a joke. We reran the samples to be sure, triple-checked. This is not a clerical error. Biologically, the boy you created is not your son. Everything stopped. The air, the clock, the world. That's impossible, I breathed. I gave birth to him. I held him. I nursed him. I believe you, the doctor said gently. That's why I think you need to talk to the hospital where he was born. There is a possibility, albeit rare, of a neonatal switch. Lucas was red with anger. So what the hell are you saying? That we raised a stranger's child for 15 years. The doctor's silence was louder than any scream. The ride home was silent at first, but as soon as the front door closed behind us, Lucas exploded. I knew it. I knew something was wrong, but this is beyond anything I could have imagined. I tried to speak, to defend myself, to tell him that I didn't know, but he wasn't listening. You had a job, Christina? He growled. A job. And with that, he slammed the door to the guest room, his new home, apparently. That night, I opened the box containing Noah's hospital records, bracelets, his birth certificate, faded photographs of me holding him, crying, exhausted but radiant. I know this boy is mine, but now I have no idea how to prove it. The next morning, I sat in the kitchen, staring into a cold cup of coffee. Lucas didn't come downstairs. I heard him moving around upstairs, his footsteps heavy, deliberate. He didn't even say goodbye when he left for work. I waited until Noah left for school, then picked up the phone and dialed the number on the back of the hospital folder. St. Joseph's Memorial Hospital. The line rang 7 times before a receptionist answered. I need to speak to someone about a possible neonatal switch, I said, my voice steady only because I'd rehearsed it 50 times in my head. The woman paused. Let me transfer you to the archive. The archive transferred me to administration. Administration put me on hold for 11 minutes. Then a man with a flat, tired voice came on the line. Are you talking about an incident from 15 years ago? He asked. That would be early 2009. Our records only go back 10 years in our system. You'd have to submit a formal request, possibly even a subpoena. A subpoena? Can't you just look up who else gave birth that day? He sighed. I'm sorry, ma'am, I really am. But even if I wanted to help, regulations prevent me from sharing any identifying information about other patients. Of course, privacy laws. What a joke. My entire life was falling apart, and I was being asked to fill out paperwork like I was applying for a library card. I hung up, my hands shaking. Then I grabbed my coat and keys. If I couldn't get answers over the phone, I'd go over there in person. The drive to St. Joseph's felt surreal. I hadn't been back there in 15 years. The building had changed, new wing, new signage, but the parking lot was exactly the same. I parked in the same spot Lucas had parked the night he'd rushed me in, holding my hand, telling me everything would be okay. Inside, the lobby smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee. I approached the front desk and asked to speak to someone from the medical records department. The young woman behind the desk gave me a long, uncomfortable look. I'm sorry, but without a court order, I cut her off. My son was probably switched at birth here. I'm not asking for names or addresses. I just need to know who else gave birth that day, please. She hesitated, then looked back. Wait here, she whispered. 10 minutes later, a woman in her 60s approached. Her name tag read Clara Peterson, Director of Patient Services. I remember you, she said softly before I could speak. You were in room 207, emergency C-section. You had complications. We almost lost you. I blinked. Do you remember me? She nodded. I've worked here for 40 years. Some stories stay with you. We moved into her office. I told her everything. The DNA test, the results, the shock, the unbearable uncertainty. She listened quietly, then opened a locked drawer and pulled out a thin folder. We were in the middle of the transition to digital records back then, she said. Some things still exist on paper. Her finger slid down a column of handwritten names and times. There were 3 other births that day, 2 boys and a girl. You were the only C-section. My heart raced. Is it possible someone made a mistake? She exhaled. It was chaotic that week. 2 nurses on leave. The maternity floor was short-staffed. I'm not going to lie to you, yes, it's possible. But proving it, she looked me in the eye. You're going to need legal help, Christina, and fast. If there was a mix-up, it may have gone unnoticed for 15 years, but someone out there could be asking the same question soon. I didn't go home from the hospital, I couldn't. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot, my hands numb on the steering wheel, watching the afternoon sun dip below the rim of the old maternity ward. A child not mine, but mine in every way that matters. I gave birth to him, or thought I did. I raised him, sang him to sleep, held him through fevers, schoolyard fights, heartbreak over a goldfish that no longer swam. What did biology mean in the face of that? Still, I had to know the truth, and for that, I needed a lawyer. I called Mary first. She answered on the second ring. Christina, finally. I've been so worried. What's going on? She nearly broke. Her voice was warm, familiar, comforting, but I held firm. I need a name, lawyer. Someone good, someone who won't laugh at me when I tell him my son might have been switched at birth. There was silence, then a pause. Are you serious? Totally serious. She didn't ask any questions. Call Max Stewart. He's not cheap, but he's handled some strange malpractice cases before. He got 7 figures for a family when a surgical team left a sponge inside their daughter. When I got to his office, the sky had already turned charcoal gray. Max was in his 40s, handsome, with sharp features and tired eyes. He didn't bat an eye as I laid it all out. The DNA tests, the doctor's reaction, Clara Peterson's hesitant admission. I've heard of 2 other cases like this, he said, flipping through a yellow legal pad. In both cases, it took months to get access to the birth records. One case found a child 2 counties away. In the other, they never located the birth parents. And what happens if the other family finds out first? Max stared at me blankly. It depends on what they want. Custody, contact, sometimes just answers. But let me be honest, this can get messy and emotional, especially for your son. I nodded. I hadn't told Noah anything yet. Every time I looked at him, my throat closed up. How do you say, you might not be ours and we don't even know who you are? Lucas hadn't come home the night before. No calls, no texts. I didn't know where he was, and a small, shameful part of me didn't care. He was spiraling into guilt, and I couldn't afford to follow him. That night, as I sat on the edge of my bed with a box of old photos, I noticed something odd. One photo, taken shortly after I gave birth, when I was still dazed from the anesthesia, had a nurse in the background. She wasn't smiling. Her eyes were wide, scared. She was holding a swaddled baby, but her name tag was crooked, illegible. She looked young, maybe in her early 20s, and behind her, something blurry, a crib? Or was it two? I turned the photo over. Lucas had scrawled, Christina and Noah, January 4th, 2009, scrawled in black marker. I stared at that date for a long time, then called Clara. Was there a nurse on duty that night? Early 20s, long blonde hair, kind of skinny. She's in one of my pictures. There was a pause. Yes, Clara said quietly. That was Laura Jackson. She was new then. First month on the job. What happened to her? Another pause. She quit 2 weeks later, without warning. Laura Jackson had disappeared. No social media presence, no LinkedIn, not even a wedding announcement. It had taken 4 days and a minor miracle for Max's private investigator to find a trace of her. She was living under her married name now, Laura Jackson, in a small town 2 hours north, working part-time as a florist. I didn't wait. I drove there alone, the back roads winding like my thoughts. I didn't know what I would say to her. What could I say? Hi, I think you might have accidentally stolen my son. The flower shop was tucked between a diner and a fishing store, quaint pink shutters, bell on the door. I walked into the scent of lilies and eucalyptus. A woman behind the counter was trimming stems, blonde hair pinned back, slim. Her hands shook slightly as she looked up and saw me. Can I help you? Laura Jackson froze, her smile fading. Excuse me, I'm Christina Alden. I gave birth at St. Joseph's on January 4th, 2009. You were there, I saw it in your eyes. Recognition, then panic. Look, I haven't worked in the medical field in years. I don't remember you. Do you? I said softly. Please, just hear me out. She didn't shoo me away, that was something. I followed her into the storage room, surrounded by buckets of carnations and glass vases. She offered me a seat on an overturned crate. She didn't sit. I was 21, she said. It was my second week. We were 2 nurses short. The night shift was chaos. 2 women went into labor in a row, one natural, one emergency. Me, I said. She nodded. There was a mix-up with the cribs, she continued. We should have double-checked the ID bracelets and crib tags, but someone from administration was rushing me and the babies had been moved for observation. I thought I did it right. I swear I did. My stomach churned. Are you saying you switched them up? I didn't mean to, she whispered, her eyes watering. But when I realized something wasn't right later that week, I went to my supervisor. She told me not to say a word, that it would ruin lives, that it was probably nothing, and if I did, I'd be held responsible. So you quit? She nodded. Did anyone else ever speak up? Did anyone else suspect anything? She shook her head. No. I remember the other family, the woman who gave birth naturally. Her baby was fussy, wouldn't sleep, she looked exhausted. Do you know her name? I only remember her first name, Linda. She had red hair, her husband, he worked construction, I think. That's all I have. Linda, red hair, construction. It wasn't much, but it was something. I've never forgotten that night, Laura said, her voice cracking. Not once. I walked out with shaking hands and a business card with Lara's new last name scrawled on the back. Max would want to know right away, but I drove home first. Noah was on the porch, shooting the ball at the rusty hoop that Lucas had never fixed. Hi, Mom, he said, wiping the sweat from his forehead. Are you okay? You look tired. I nodded. Just errands, too much on my mind. Your dad's not home again. I know. He bounced the ball twice, looked at me. Did you two fight? I forced a smile. Something like that. He passed me the ball. Want to shoot? I did. We played until dusk, just the 2 of us, laughing, moving, breathing. The boy who might not have been mine, but somehow was. Max ran Linda's name through every database he could access, but Linda and red hair didn't narrow things down much. There were dozens of birth records for the county that day, but only one stood out. Linda Johnson, 24 at the time of delivery, address listed just 2 towns away. She'd given birth to a boy, no complications, and was released 48 hours later. It was all there, right in front of me. My hands shook as I dialed the number Max had provided. No one answered. The next day, I drove to the address, a 2-story brick house in a quiet neighborhood, wind chimes on the porch, a scooter in the driveway. I hesitated, then knocked. A woman answered, auburn hair pulled back in a loose bun, eyes tired. She looked at me the way a mother might look at a stranger who'd gotten too close to her children. Yes? Hello, sorry to bother you. Are you Linda Johnson? Yes. Do we know each other? I swallowed hard. No, but I believe we may have given birth at the same hospital on the same day. January 4th, 2009. St. Joseph's Memorial Hospital. She stared at me long enough that I almost turned and walked away. Then she said, "You better come in." The house smelled of cinnamon and soap. A teenage boy sat on the couch with headphones on, glanced at me, and then went back to his phone. "This is Peter," she said. 15, grumpy, won't eat anything but beige. He didn't look like me, but something about the way he tilted his head gave me a jolt. "I know this is going to sound crazy," I began, "but I recently found out that the boy I raised may not be biologically mine or my husband's, and that there may have been a mix-up at the hospital." She paled. "Wait, you think Peter?" I nodded. "I know how crazy this sounds, but the DNA test came back and a nurse confirmed there were inconsistencies that night. I don't want to cause any trouble. I just want answers." Linda sat down heavily on the arm of the chair. "I've always wondered," she whispered. "Peter's blood type didn't match mine or Seamus's. His pediatrician brushed it off, said it was possible, but there were other things. His hair went dark early, and he's never looked like anyone else in our family." I didn't say anything. Seamus doesn't deal well with uncertainty, but I wondered silently. Seamus, her husband, the construction worker. It all fit together. "I'm not here to take anything from you," I said, "but I believe I may be his biological mother." We were silent for a long time. Then she asked the question I'd been dreading. "What about my son? Where is he?" "At home," I said softly. "His name is Noah. He's smart, kind, plays basketball. He doesn't know anything yet." She nodded, pressing her fingers to her lips, her eyes shining. "You're the first person I've ever told this to," she said, "but I've had postpartum depression bad for months. I always thought it was something in me, like I couldn't bond properly, but maybe it was because I knew somewhere deep down that he wasn't mine. I wanted to cry, to scream, to hug her, anything. Instead, I asked, would you be open to a DNA test just to confirm?" She nodded. Later that night, I sat on my porch watching Noah throw the ball again. I tried to imagine Peter in his place. I couldn't. I didn't want to. Noah was mine. No test could change that. But I had to face reality. If the results came back as I suspected, we were on the brink of something irreversible. And Lucas, he hadn't been home in 3 nights. I checked his credit card login from our shared account. A charge to a motel across town, another to a restaurant I didn't recognize, a third for a single bouquet of roses. He wasn't alone. The DNA tests came back in 3 days. I asked Max to call me with the results. I couldn't bear to open another envelope. His voice was firm on the phone. "Peter is his biological son, and Noah is Linda's." I sat on the floor of my living room and cried until my throat was hoarse, not at the science, not at the proof, but at the way everything I thought I knew about my life had been built on a stranger's mistake. I hadn't told Noah yet. Every time I looked at him, I imagined that moment, the moment when his entire world would come crashing down. The mother he adored wasn't his, the father who had abandoned him couldn't even look at him, and a stranger, a boy he'd never met, was out there carrying a truth neither of us had asked for. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I took the day off from work and drove to the motel listed in Lucas's transaction history. He answered the door shirtless, surprised. "Christina." Behind him, a woman emerged, maybe early 30s, dark hair in a robe. She wasn't even trying to hide. "You're not even going to deny it?" I said. Lucas rubbed the back of his neck. "It didn't mean anything." I laughed. "Motel stays, flowers, meals, it sounds like it meant something." "She listens to me," he snapped. "She hasn't lied to me in 15 years. The slap came before I realized I'd moved. My palm stung. I didn't lie. I bled in that hospital. I held our son. Yes, our son. And I loved him with everything I had. That DNA test doesn't change that. You ran away, Lucas. You hid behind a younger woman because the truth scared you. He didn't speak, just turned and walked farther into the room, as if I was the problem for showing up. I drove home in silence. Linda had texted me earlier. Peter's been asking questions. I haven't told him yet. Maybe we should meet. We set a time for Saturday, neutral ground, a park near the city limits, a quiet place with open space and no one to overhear if things got tense. Saturday arrived with gray skies and a chilly wind. I drove Noah over, telling him only that he was meeting someone important. He was wearing his favorite sweatshirt, his hands stuffed in his pockets. Peter and Linda were already there. Peter looked taller in person, thinner, more angular. When he saw us approaching, he cocked his head in the same way Noah always did when he was confused. The boys looked at each other for a long, silent moment. Then Noah turned to me. Mom, what's going on? Linda's voice was weak. Peter, honey, this is Christina. She's your birth mother. The words dropped like a stone into a still lake. I saw Noah's brow furrow. I reached for his hand, but he pulled it away. What are you talking about? I crouched down. Honey, there was a mistake at the hospital when you were born. They gave me the wrong baby, but I didn't know. I loved you. I raised you. You're my son. You always will be. His eyes were wide. So I'm not yours, ever? You are. Just not by blood. He took a step back. Does Dad know? I nodded. And that's why he left. I couldn't answer. He turned to look at Peter. So you're me? Peter looked equally lost. I don't know. Neither of them spoke again. They just stood there, 15 years of someone else's choices written all over their faces. The days after the park were too quiet. Noah barely spoke to me, went to school, came home, locked himself in his room. The sound of bouncing basketballs and video games faded. I stopped hearing music through his walls. The house felt still, like it was holding its breath. I left food outside his door. Some of it disappeared. Most of it didn't. On the third day, I found him sitting on the porch steps after dark, hood over his head, knees drawn up to his chest. Hi, I said softly, sitting down next to him. He didn't look at me, just stared at the street. Do I have to go live with that woman? No, my voice cracked. No, honey, no one is taking you away from me. But she's my real mother. I'm your real mother, I whispered, maybe not by blood, but in every other way that matters. He wiped his nose on his sleeve. I don't know who I am anymore. I put my hand on his back, and this time he didn't pull away. Neither do I said, but maybe we can figure it out together. The next morning I met with Max again. He drafted the first letter to the hospital, an official notice of legal action. The tone was clear. We know and we're not going to sit back. They'll try to buy time, he warned. They always do. But now that we've confirmed the mistake, it's just a matter of pressure and persistence. I asked if we could get the other family involved. Linda hadn't mentioned a lawyer yet, but I didn't want to go to war without her knowing. Max hesitated. She may not want the same things you do. I'm not trying to take Peter away from her, I said. I just want to get to know him. That afternoon Linda called. Peter wants to meet you, she said, properly. He has questions. I smiled despite myself. I like that. Lucas didn't come home, didn't call. A part of me had finally accepted that he wasn't coming back, and strangely, it didn't break me, not this time. I'd already lost one kind of family. I wouldn't lose another. Peter came over on a rainy Wednesday. He didn't say much at first, just stood in the hallway, hands in his jacket pockets. I offered him a drink, and he shook his head. Then softly, he said, I just want to see where I would have grown up. I showed him the living room, the backyard where Noah's growth chart was still taped to the fence, the photos on the wall, Noah's gap-toothed smile from second grade, him and Lucas in front of a science fair project. Peter stared at one picture for a long time, me holding Noah in my arms, my face flushed from the summer heat. That could have been me, he said. I swallowed hard. It still could be, somehow. We sat for hours, talking slowly about music, school, the kinds of things people say when they don't know where to start, but something loosened between us. When he left, he hugged me, Stiff, awkward, but real. Later that week, Linda called. Noah asked if he could come over for dinner, she said. I smiled into the phone. What did you say? I said yes. Of course I said yes. We agreed. No pressure, just one meal, one step at a time. The hospital responded to Max's letter. A carefully worded denial, no admission of guilt, but buried in the language was an offer, confidential mediation, an early sign that they knew they couldn't bury this forever. Max looked me in the eye. We can insist. It won't be quick, but if you want justice, real justice, we'll go all the way. I nodded. We will. As for Lucas, he never came home. He filed for divorce through a lawyer I didn't know. No apology, no conversation, just paperwork and a quick signature. And strangely, I was fine. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells, I wasn't small in my own home. I sat on the porch one night, watching the boys, my boys, throw a ball together in the driveway. Not blood brothers, not strangers, just two lives slowly circling each other, trying to make sense of what they'd been given. I lost a marriage, I lost certainty, but I didn't lose my son, and I didn't lose the will to fight for the truth. Some mistakes can't be undone, but they can be faced. Christina experienced great surprises, but fate helped to repair the mess. And this story of great new beginnings was just beginning. Did you like this story? Please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more touching stories.